Good afternoon, everyone. It is 2 o'clock, and I'm calling the April 24th meeting of the General Plan Review Committee to order. We have board members, roll call. I'm here. Don Michaelman.
Here.
Tom Hutchinson.
Here.
And Andre Carmen is absent. Mary Fredrickson.
Here.
Ralph Hess.
Here.
Jim Huffman. Rod Moyer.
Here.
Gary Warab.
Sort of here.
James McCarver is absent. And Tom Riley.
Here.
All right, so we have James McCarver and Andre. All right, also from the City Council, we have Council Liaison Ted Gambogi is present, and Lois Fruberth is present. Any other City Council people here? I don't see them. Okay. All right, and then city staff, we have Tori and George Worley, yep. Tammy DeWitt, Joe Young's not here, Chelsea is here, and that's it, right? Okay. This is an open a public meeting and is being recorded by the city. The proceedings are being televised, and representatives of the public media, the public, local cable and/or radio stations, and may also be rebroadcast. The number of board members present is 9, and it will require 5 votes for a majority. All parties wishing to be heard, including committee members, are required to state their name prior to speaking in order to ensure proper recordation. Members of the public are required to state their name and address for the record so that we may know who is speaking and be able to contact them at a later date if necessary. Oh, and Mayor Phil Good just walked in. And here comes James McCarver. So James is present. We're only missing Andre so far. And that brings our count up to 10. And we now need 6 votes for a majority. Okay. All right. Let's go to open call to the public.
Thank you, Chairman. Tammy DeWitt, Community Planner. First, before we do the open call to the public, we do have a release that was done by the City Clerk's Office in regards to participating in our public meetings. The City of Prescott invites and appreciates public participation in council and board, commission, and committee meetings. In a spirit of objective analysis and civil debate, we will follow a process format to accomplish sharing information in a productive, informative manner. Meetings and discussion will follow the following format, the agenda items. We staff report and presentation, questions from the committee, any outside presentation, which we don't have here, further discussion of the committee, public comment, and then recommendation from the committee. With decorum and respect in mind, city staff and the council kindly request that the public wait for their opportunity to speak until the public comment portion. We ask that you debate the proposal or presented item and not criticize staff or presenters. Any public outburst will hear the gavel from the chair asking for decorum, hence why you have a gavel now. If individuals continue to disrupt the meeting, they will be escorted out of the meeting. Further, members of the public are expected to present new information and ideas when addressing the committee, and if a speaker simply repeats previous comments, the chair may limit their comment time. If a speaker displays hostility toward any of the presenters or staff, they will be gavelled and asked to leave the meeting. Finally, applause will be limited to recognition during the presentation and proclamation portions of the meeting. It will not be permitted any other time during the meeting. So now we have the open call to the public. The City of Prescott welcomes public engagement, and you guys have heard this a lot, so we'll just go to it. So do we have anybody here that does not want to speak on any of the items on the agenda? Today is the Community Connected, which has circulation, open space, wildlife connectivity, and digital connectivity. Is there anything other than that anybody wants to comment on? Nope. Okay. Next item.
All right.
That was easy.
Yep. Okay, first person we have?
Oh, we don't have anybody that wants to speak for that. These are
Okay.
for items on the agenda.
On the agenda. Okay. All right. Going to the agenda, we have approval of the March 27th General Plan Committee minutes. And recommended action is to move to approve the minutes as presented.
I make that motion.
Any discussion? Okay, we have a motion from Gary Warb. Second by Don Michaelman. Okay, go ahead, Ralph.
Ralph Hess. I'd like to commend who's ever been drafting these minutes because I read through them and I noticed that whatever I've spoken during the course of the meeting looks much better in the minutes than they did during the meeting.
Ralphie, get your seat back over here.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. It looks like a unanimous 10-0 vote. All right, so minutes are approved. Next item, we have presentation and discussion regarding the community connected chapter of the general plan.
Thank you, Chairman. So as I said, this has multiple sections, which you're seeing now with our new format. So this one has circulation, open space, wildlife connectivity, and then digital connectivity. And the idea was that a community connected, these are what connect our communities, is the open space with our regional parks and such, with our transportation corridors. Wildlife is a concern. They don't have boundaries, so we want to make sure to address them. And then also the digital connectivity has been coming up more and more. With COVID, after that, we did realize what kind of lack of internet, mostly internet service that we have in the county. So we'll go through that when we get to that section. So the first section, first page kind of is just an opening statement about community connected. Was there any comments or anything on page 1? Yes.
Tammy, Don Michaelman. We have several sections here where we are interfacing with other governmental entities, cities or counties. Now, do we make sure we're coordinating with their general plans too? Or do we ever hit situations where they don't want to do it and we do? Or
In regards to other communities,
yes.
we do look at their general plans to make sure, mostly we will look at the land use map to make sure where our boundaries are kind of joining, we're kind of saying the same thing or thinking the same thing, mostly with Prescott Valley because they're right on our eastern border right now. The western side is the county and forest, so which are reviewers. So when we do get to the 60-day comment period, we do send out to all the surrounding jurisdictions to ask for their input to make sure that we are not out of alliance with them. This is a different format, so this is a little different to review, as you guys have, are seeing, and it's different. The goal of this plan, though, is that we don't want to duplicate what's in other plans, because those plans are updated all the time, and that we don't want the information that's in this plan to become out of date within a year, so. And to try to shorten the length, why duplicate information from one plan and put it in this plan? So the first one we have here, which we'll go to because we know that's what most of the audience is here for, is with SIMPO. So SIMPO is the Regional Transportation Planning Authority that was created. Prescott, as well as the other surrounding areas, are all part of SIMPO. We're all partners in that organization. And every 5 years, their plan is updated. So the last plan was done in 2020. This week, they're kicking off the start of updating their regional transportation plan. It'll be done next year, right before this gets approved. Okay, goes to the ballot. I'm going to hold myself. So any information that we have in here in regards to that's in the regional transportation plan is going to be outdated. Mm-hmm. So staff's recommendation for all these sections that we're looking at, not just this chapter, is that if there's information and it's in another plan, just to reference that plan and don't duplicate it. Because then if that plan is updated anytime in the next 10 years before we update this, which George keeps suggesting every 5 years, I don't know if my mental capacity can do that. Yeah, he'll be retired. That everything's going to be outdated. So this is our suggestion, and that we're seeing in other jurisdictions that are taking the same format, is not duplicating information. This is going to be interactive, web-based. So we have a lot of links. Like you said, we saw the last section that we saw. We have a lot of hyperlinks, links to websites, links to other documents. And that's what we like to see here. Instead of having this information in here that we know is outdated. I mean, you have the Great Western, that's from 2010. So this information about Great Western is from the last general plan. And then the Sundog information, that's actually also from the last general plan and would need to be updated if it was to stay in here. But our suggestion is to take that out. Anything in here that's in the regional transportation plan, like the service, traffic volumes and services, those are all from the SIMPO study, and those are already out of date. So 'cause the ones from 2018, we know there's a lot more traffic now than 2018. Another one was from 2020. So I do have, Ian would have been here today, Ian Mattingly, our traffic engineer. He had knee surgery on Monday, so he can't be here. But he worked with the Prescott Bicycle, Pedestrian, and Traffic Advisory Committee and the Public Works staff. They looked at the old section of the circulation to update it and give input. So I'll just read what Ian put in here for that. They worked to expand the old circulation element to include more information it felt would be useful to the City Council to direct their decisions on transportation planning in the future. Specifically, it was determined that large planned developments and planned roadways recommended in the Regional Transportation Plan should be included in the circulation element. This included developments like Deepwell Ranch, Granite Dells Estates, AED, and the future recommended roadways like Great Western and Sundog. The PBTAC committee felt that these roadways should be included as the technical studies of various iterations of the RTP indicate they are needed to maintain satisfactory level of service on the transportation network. Furthermore, they felt that the decision to include them should come from city leadership, the mayor and council, and the citizens of Prescott, and that the general plan committee in its role could also make a decision to include or exclude the section as it felt led. For that reason, Sundog was left in it by the PBTAC. So, but like I said, the Regional Transportation Plan is in the process of being updated. We also have the 69 corridor study being done that's going to be completed anytime now. And then there's other transportation plan that they're working on too, which aren't all included in here either. So our suggestion and recommendation for staff is to not have this information in here that's from the Regional Transportation Plan and just make reference to it through the link to the website.
Rod.
Yeah, Rod Moyer. This chapter organization is kind of new to me, and I'm not necessarily opposed to it. However, we seem to have lost the element level organization. For instance, the header emphasis on open space, which was a separate element, looks the same, is no bigger than 5 or 6 preceding headers for transportation. So I think we need to maybe just reformat a bit.
Well, the formatting would come later because it's not going to look anything like this.
Okay.
It's going to look way
All right.
different. But right now we're working on the text,
Okay.
the meat of the document. Then the bones later will come with the formatting of it. With
Yeah,
the
we
consultants.
just need to keep in mind how the public likes to read this sort of thing. And they will want to find elements they're interested in and maybe just kind of speed read others.
Yeah, definitely.
Mary?
Tammy, did I hear you say that the staff recommendation is to remove these sections that are picked out of the SIMPO reports that are soon to be updated?
Yes.
Okay.
And then we include the link to their website with all the transportation studies.
And so I guess my next question on that, because I do think that's appropriate, and a lot of my comments or questions are kind of moot if the general sense is to remove them. But I guess a related question is having a link to the SIMPO studies or other plans when we're selling this to the public, the idea of voting yes or no on the general plan as it's presented. If I get asked the question, well, does this link indicate that I'm voting for the SIMPO plan or the other city plans that it may be linked to?
No. We're just referencing for information. If you want more information, click on this and go to this website.
Is there going to be anything within this body that indicates that?
Yes.
You know, essentially referring to it, not indicating acceptance of.
Correct. And the regional transportation plan is a separate public process. So there's lots of public input and public meetings and such. So that goes through another process as well as our other plans.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Tammy, the letter that you read, what department was that from?
That was from Ian Mattingly, our traffic engineer.
Traffic engineer.
And he's the staff that works with the Bike, Pedestrian, and Traffic Advisory Committee.
And he's recommending that Sundog Connector and Great Western remain in the general plan. Is that correct?
Well, so when that committee was reviewing it, they were also looking at Prescott Valley's general plan that they just did, which is in the typical format. And I was there to explain this is not going to be in that same format. So and we don't want to have information in there from other plans. But this is what was recommended from that committee. So we put it in there. But our staff's recommendation is still to take it out because we know that we're going to have public comment on it. We have people here to comment on that. That more than likely through the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council, it's going to be taken out anyways. So, but just in the 60-day comment period, we'll probably see information about that. But like I said, all this is going to be outdated when this gets adopted.
You'll be next, Rod. You'll be next. Tom Riley, I'm not clear on what it is you're going to be taking. In other words, right now we have, 28 pages, 30 pages, whatever
And
it is?
21 is circulation. 21 pages are circulation.
So what's going to get taken out? I mean, there's a lot of stuff in here that doesn't need to be here. I agree with that.
Yeah.
But there's also a lot of stuff in here that needs to stay because we are, like Mary says, we're going to need to be educating the public with this document. And to have them refer to a link every time they want more information just doesn't cut it, in my opinion.
It's just for SIMPO, for the regional transportation stuff. So it's just basically from page 3, probably the bottom. We'll work with SIMPO to make sure that we're addressing it. But basically from page 4, 5, 6, once we get to the Deep Well Ranch Master Plan, we agree that these are master plans that have been approved that create connectivity, and they did a great explanation of what kind of connectivity those created. So we can leave that in. But then once we get to page 11, some of these graphs, they are from the Regional Transportation Study on
Okay,
page
yeah.
11. You know, that's 2018 numbers. We know those are outdated. Plus the level of service, that's all from the Regional Transportation Plan, which will all be updated.
I can see taking out the plans and some of the outdated information, and linking to that. But the general descriptions that are in here, not necessarily just for SIMPO, but for each one of these developments, like the
Yes.
Arizona Eco Development,
No, we
AED,
keep that in. Those
that's
are
going to be
city.
kept in.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to get a sense of what's going and what's staying.
So what would go is basically pages 4 through 6. 7 would stay in regards to Deep Well Ranch Master Plan. And then the AED through 9, Granite Dells.
You
And
just said
then-
the description is going to stay in, but the maps are going to leave.
We'll leave the maps too and the description of those because those are what kind of connectivity those are creating.
Again, I'm a little confused. I'm sorry. I'm a little
Because
dense
those
there.
aren't part of the regional transportation plan. So those developments were not in the regional transportation plan. Those are developments that have been approved, master plans within the city of Prescott to create connectivity within the city.
So you're suggesting taking out on page 3 from line 9, which is a SIMPO.
Well, I want to leave in SIMPO because they are still, we're still
Okay.
part. So basically, page 4 through 6,
Is it page 11?
page 11, 12, 13, 14. Yeah. Those are all within the regional transportation plan, the SIMPO's regional. So we'll link to that plan, their page where their plans are.
So you think we don't need to even reference any of those?
Nope.
Can you go through the pages that then we have comment after?
Sure,
I can't tear out that fast.
slowly.
You kind of jumped the gun a little bit.
Yeah.
No, this is like,
No.
this is why they even,
Yeah.
why are they even in there?
So page 4, 5, 6, 7 would stay in, 8, 9 would stay in through 10. So 7 through 10 would stay in. So the information about the Sundog conductor, that we take that out. Great Western, we take out because that was from 2010. That's way outdated. Then we could leave in about the Deep Well Ranch master plan. We would leave in about AED master plan. And then Granite Dells Estates, because those all created connectivities. And then on page 11, when it starts talking about the level of service and stuff, that's all from the regional transportation plan. So from page 11 would be taken out 12 and 13 and 14. So that takes out about 5 pages,
Okay.
which I'm not worried about length, but it takes out 5 pages.
Rod?
Yeah, Rod Moyer. I think I agree if I understand what you're saying would be taken out. I'd rather none of those things be even mentioned because there has been a problem in the past with some agency who's already been named implying that the public has approved those things that are in the planning, and that's not what the general plan does.
Go ahead, Tom.
And we'll go back to page 1 and start from the beginning. I just wanted to kind of get this out, to talk about right now before we start going through the rest of the pages.
I think there needs to be a synopsis in here of SIMPO, basically just, as an organization, not just a link. But I also think that the studies that they have done in the past, I don't think we need to have the detail in there for the studies, but the studies should be listed in here, and they should be linked back to the transportation study. I believe that they really need to be mentioned here.
The problem is we're going to miss studies because they have a lot of studies and they're always being updated.
Fine. Then we just put in the ones that we have. We can't predict the future, so we need to keep in the ones that we have, in my opinion.
Okay.
Terry Sapio. I kind of am leaning the same way as Tom. SIMPO looks ahead, and this plan looks 10 years in advance and is updated once every 10 years. SIMPO updates their plans once every 5 years. And right now, here's their 2045 plan that was updated April 2020. And it's pretty exhaustive, and they still include the Sundog Connector, and they still include the Great Western. And I think that for people in the city of Prescott that want to know what's going on in Prescott, they should be aware that the Sundog Connector and the Great Western are still in the planning processes for some time in the future. Now, SIMPO looks ahead quite a ways. This is 2045, their plan for 2045. Their next plan that they're updating right now will be for 2050. By that time, looking at the age group that we have here in attendance, many of us are going to be in nursing homes or pushing daisies by 2050.
Speak for yourself.
Gary, what are you saying?
But I'm inclined to agree that because SIMPO has not removed these connectors from their plan, that I kind of agree with the city streets department that we should probably keep it as well. How does the rest of the committee feel about that? Okay, go ahead, Don.
Don Michaelman. I agree that we can make a reference and have a way to click on this. But should we have a description in there for the person who has never read a general plan before of what is Simcoe?
Oh, that'll stay in. That will stay in.
All right, so there'll be a description. What is the Great Western? This is what it is. Detailed information, go here.
We'll look at that. Have the feasibility of that.
I was just going to Jim Huffman comment that we got to remember what the folks are voting on. They're not voting on the Simpo. So, okay.
I would agree, this is Jim McCarver, just from an educational standpoint, that we should have a reference to Simpo and maybe a small paragraph of the things that they have listed. This plan is for our city, and a lot of this stuff is way outside, although it interconnects with us, but it's way outside. And to go in a lot of detail is probably, in my opinion, overkill. But I think we should have a brief reference and concentrate on the developments, the traffic developments that impact in our city limits.
If I had to guess, what the citizens of this city are concerned about is traffic congestion. And they want to know what we're going to do about it to fix that. And I think the Simpo data is support for the actions that we specify. But it's not the bulk of the focus.
Tammy, I think you lost your mic.
Okay, Don?
I think I gave mine.
Well, go ahead and, oh, yes, okay. Ralph?
Are we going around?
Yep,
Yeah.
going around.
Okay, Ralph Hess. Well, first of all, I don't want to get too far into the Simpo discussion before we start going back to page 1 and do this in an organized fashion. But since we're going around the corner or around the table, I think I have some suggestions for some changes on page 3 that I'm not going to go into right now because I figure we're going to go 1, 2, 3. But as for including the pages that you're suggesting be omitted, I agree they should be omitted. And there's a number of reasons why that I can go into. One is Sundog Connector design concept and report and environmental overview was released by Simpo in February 2024. It shows that project is projected to cost $151 million. The public has come out in strong force and opposing it. And I suspect this is going to be subject to Prop 401 if it ever comes out as a project to be put forward by Simpo, which means under Prop 401, it would have to have voter approval for even the project. So there are so many problems with this and it's so outdated that I agree with staff's suggestion that the pages that have been referenced 4 through 6, 11 through 14, all be omitted.
Okay, please.
Yeah, I agree with that, and absolutely. And I still believe that even if any reference must be made to any of those projects, that it be made very clear in the text that approval of that general plan by the public is not an approval of those projects.
I get a phone. Gary Warub. I've always been a fan of Occam's razor. If it's simple enough, leave it alone. There's a whole audience here who just applauded for throw it out in more ways than one. And I totally agree. Throw it out. And put a reference that this will come up at a different time. I like Ralph's suggestion that it, the 401 prop. So why throw more fluff when we don't need it? This document is supposed to be simple, so everyone who picks it up can go, yeah, I get that, and then vote on it. So I'm not in favor of adding stuff that doesn't need to be.
Mary Frederickson, I don't want to take up the time to repeat, but I agree to leave it out.
Okay, I have a couple of clarifications. One of them that Ralph Hess brought up was the $151 million cost of the Sundog Connector. I want everyone to be aware, for those that are not aware, of the 5 different segments of the Sundog Connector and who pays for what. Segment number 1 goes through Storm Ranch. Segment number 2 is between Storm Ranch and Unit 9 of Yavapai Hills. Segment 3 goes through Unit 9 of Yavapai Hills. Segment 4 goes from Unit 9 of Yavapai Hills to the town limits of Prescott Valley. And Segment 5 is from the town limits of Prescott Valley to where it meets up with Highway 69 at Hobby Lobby. Of those 5 segments, the city of Prescott is already committed to, through development agreements with Storm Ranch and Unit 9 of Yavapai Hills, that the city of Prescott is responsible for the cost of Segment 2. That's $67,800,000 according to SIMPO. Segment 1 is the responsibility for that cost is Storm Ranch, which I find surprising because that's an astounding $32 million for the Storm Ranch segment of that, and they only have 227 units planned for Storm Ranch. That comes out to an incredible $141,000 per residential unit in Storm Ranch, and I don't see how the people buying houses in Storm Ranch are going to absorb $141,000 per house in Storm Ranch for their costs of Segment 1 of the Sundog Connector. Segment 3, that cost is $8,300,000, and that's that cost was absorbed by Unit 9 of Yavapai Hills. Unit 9 of Yavapai Hills, per the development agreement, is approved for 1,814 residential units. That will more than double the number of residential units in Yavapai Hills, because right now Yavapai Hills has 1,196 residential units in Yavapai Hills, and this is going to add another 1,814 if they build it out as per the development agreement. And that cost comes out to $4,575 per residential unit for Unit 9 of Yavapai Hills. $4,575 is much more reasonable per residential unit than $141,000 per residential unit in Storm Ranch. Segment 4 is the only segment of the 5 segments that right now is not covered by an agreement, a development agreement with any developers. That is right now, with the agreements that the city of Prescott already has, Segment 4 is the only optional segment of the 5 segments of the Sundog Connector that the city of Prescott has any control over. Segment 1, 2, and 3 are already covered by development agreements, and in order to change those, the city of Prescott would have to renegotiate the development agreements with Storm Ranch and Yavapai Hills. Segment 5, and Segment 4, the cost of that is $20,800,000. Segment 5, that's inside the town limits of Prescott Valley, and that is $22,600,000, and that's up to the discretion of the town of Prescott Valley, and Prescott has nothing to do with that. So, of the $151,500,000 that SIMPO estimates that the Sundog Connector would cost, the city of Prescott is responsible for segment 2, or $67,800,000 of that $151 million. So we have a lot of public interest in not seeing the Sundog connector being built. But the only part of the 5 parts of the Sundog connector that right now the city has any discretion over is segment 4. Now, that's the part between Yavapai Hills and the town of Prescott Valley, because the first 3 parts are covered by development agreements already. I know that there's talk of that some people would like to have Unit 9 of Yavapai Hills purchased and added to the Glassford Dells Regional Park, which would be a wonderful thing. The thing is to quote the movie from Jerry Maguire, is show me the money. Where are we going to get the money to buy that land? So if that land were to be purchased by the city, that would then make segment 2, 3, and 4 discretionary for the city of Prescott. Segment 1 would still be covered with the development agreement of Storm Ranch. But 2, 3, 4 the city of Prescott could decide to do whatever they want with those 3 segments if that land was purchased. Segment 5 is still the discretion of Prescott Valley. And that's my 2 cents on what we can and cannot do. And I don't think we have the authority to tell the city of Prescott that the city should willfully and intentionally violate terms of development agreements that they already have.
But this doesn't do that, because development agreements are agreements that are in place. We have lots of them, and that doesn't negate that whether it's in the plan or not.
Okay. All right, Ralph.
Yeah, Ralph Hess. I'm not going to address each one of those because I want to move on. But what I do want to say is that development agreement with Storm Ranch only requires the city to widen a road that is the obligation of the Storm Ranch to build if, in fact, it actually develops the property. And that's not necessarily going to have to widen that road, and particularly if this project doesn't go through. So first of all, that's inaccurate. And I'm not going to go and address any of the other issues because I want to get to page 1. Thank you.
Rod.
I am going to get to one of those issues. I do not agree that the city is on the hook, for instance, for what you call segment 2. First of all, the development agreement allows the developer to build that road, and maybe we have to provide the right-of-way, but that's not the same as the cost of building a 4-lane highway that is the Sundog connector.
So since we're not going to have the Sundog, maybe we want to go back to page 1, since we kind of have a consensus about the regional transportation plan in SIMPO.
All right, Tom.
I'm not done with that yet. Tom Riley, what's bothering me here is that we're leaving out information. Now, the scope of that information can become pretty concise, and I think it needs to be more concise than what's here. But a general plan is not just for information, it's also supposed to give the city some sense of a direction that it will be going in so that decision makers can refer back to it over a period of the next 10 years in order to be able to help guide decisions that need to be made. So my question is, if you're going to start leaving things out, what else are we going to leave out? I mean, we referenced last time we were here, we referenced the downtown historic plan, historic district. We have a whole blurb in there. Are we going to leave that out? We're going to take all that out? What about healthcare? What about workforce housing? We're going to take all these things out that are just simply that are referenced tons of other places. We can't take them out of the plan. They're part of the plan, and we should know that whether or not we think that these are some of the things that the city should be including and some of the things that the city should be looking at as the decision makers over the next 10 years look at making decisions. And I think that if you're going to leave out a lot of this stuff, like, well, SIMPO covers that someplace else. Well, so does the downtown plan cover. It's covered someplace.
That's a city plan. The regional is a regional plan. The city of Prescott is still a partner.
But it affects the city. It affects the city, and it affects the decision making within the city. And so for that reason alone, if you're going to start leaving things out, then I'm going to come up with a litany of all the things that you should start to leave out of this plan. A whole bunch of them. Because we're not here to talk about the Sundog either. We're here to talk about the direction that we'd like the city to go in. So I'd like to focus on that, and maybe going back to page 1 for Ralph would be the thing to do here.
Yeah.
I think it's a good idea. Let's go to page 1. Ralph, what do you have?
All right. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, folks. Okay. I'll go through the list. On page 1, line 4, I'd add water to the list of items that are important for a regional approach.
Okay, please.
Let's see, it's lines 13 through 17. I suggest be taken from page 1 and moved to page 3 at the introduction to SIMPO.
For the regional cooperation.
No, line 13 for regional roadway coordination, because that's where you mentioned SIMPO, and just use that as a lead-in paragraph to SIMPO on page 3.
Okay.
I have a question as to whether Prescott is still the primary economic driver in the region. I suspect we are, but I'm not sure about that. And then on line 16, I would insert the term regional right there before the last 2 words, promote regional land use planning, since this is the regional portion of the description.
What page and line are you saying again, Ralph?
That's line, we're still on page 1.
Okay.
So line 16, I'd insert the word regional between promote and land, the last 2 words on line 16.
Wow,
Oh, okay.
that's so different.
And on goal 1, that'd be line 22, I'd change opportunities to the residents of Prescott to transportational opportunities for regional residents. Let's see. As under strategy 1.1, where you indicate actively participate in regional organizations, I suggest providing some examples so we know what you're talking about there. On strategy number 1.2, after the word meet, I'd indicate collaboratively, so that it indicates that we're meeting collaboratively with Prescott's regional neighbors, and describe how we're going to do that.
Isn't that the same as coordinate?
No. Let's see. On line 36,
Which page?
I'm still on page 1.
Okay.
I figured other people are going to have comments on page 1. So on line 36, I'd change to within, where you have connections to our natural environment, connections within our natural environment.
Why?
Because I think that's more accurately describes the relationship. On line 38, I would change, it is important to encourage new developments to it's important to require new developments. And on line 43, after neighborhoods to businesses, I'd add open space and trails.
What line was it again? 43? Okay, let me get Tom. You want to?
Well, dang, we are going to be here a long time, Ralph. I hope you didn't do this with all the pages. couple of things in here as far as in changing from encourage to require. I think that might be something we should consider doing. The reason being is that we said we wanted this thing to have a little bit more teeth. And I think that puts a little bit more teeth into that. So I'm in agreement with that. As far as connections within our natural environment, most development is not in a natural environment. So connecting to a natural environment would be more appropriate than connecting within a natural environment. It's a minor point, but I just think that I think that's more confusing than resolving. And as far as should promote regional land use planning, that's why we're part of SIMPO. So that's my take on some of your ideas. I also like the idea of putting water in there.
Don Michaelman. Ralph, known you for years, but I don't agree with you on goal number one. I think it stays as it is because by coordinating with other regional entities, it affects the residents of Prescott. So I think it should stay the way it is.
Jim McCarver, my comments on changing or expanding the strategies, just looking back at the old general plan, they were general comments. And I think, I don't know if there's a standard definition for what the strategy is supposed to include, but I would think it would be that and not go into a long, drawn out, well, we're going to do that by doing this, this, and this. It should be kept succinct, I think.
Anyone else? Any other questions, comments?
I think this is relative. I've been for many years now studying the relativity of open space, trails, outdoor recreation, and what are the trends coming. And the biggest trends, not only nationally, but globally, are to connect businesses, workforce housing, schools, everything to open space, trails, and outdoor recreation. And that should be extremely highlighted here, like Ralph said. And for economic development purposes, I've said this a dozen times, every dollar invested in outdoor recreation is a $3 return. So we, as a community, need to emphasize that economically and health-wise, we need to emphasize that we're not doing enough. We don't have the potential. We have tremendous potential for more funding if we include those. To exclude them cuts our own throats.
Okay. All right. Not necessary to applaud, but I agree with Gary. I think that's a good point. In fact, SIMPO does agree with that philosophy themselves. In fact, when they mentioned one of the items, this is all SIMPO information that I've been reading from, one of the goals of the Sundog Connector would be to connect to the Glassford Dells Regional Park and provide trailhead parking to connect to the trails that they anticipate will be running through the park. Any other questions or comments? In fact, since we've been talking so much about Sundog, do we want to take a few public comments now or just continue on?
Well, let's continue on get through the circulation portion, then we'll get
Okay.
the public comment.
Okay.
After you've gone through the whole.
All right.
So we're on page 2 now. So is there anything on page 2? And if you have editing, you can email me those. It might be a little bit more efficient.
Page 2, I've got a couple of things. It starts off with cellular and internet access have become vital for communications, education, and commerce. And I'd like to add to that paragraph that would be at the end of line 7, where line 6 and 7 says, more efforts to inform nearby residents of the benefits and enhanced cellular services, that the benefits and of enhanced cellular services are needed. We should also include an easier and faster approval process for new cell towers is needed, because right now, I mean, we cannot get a cell tower built in this town. It's like every time one comes up for approval, it gets shot down, and that needs to change because we're never going to have better connectivity, digital connectivity, and cellular service if we can't get a cell tower built in the city limits of Prescott. I also have for line 10, we see 9 and 10, it says, providing widely available access to open space areas and trail systems creates a sense of shared values and Prescott's natural character. And that kind of is what Gary mentioned. And I agree with that. And I think part of that should be new roads should include trailhead parking to access our open spaces.
Good. Okay. The national standard for communities is a park or open space area within 10 minutes of where anybody lives. That's a standard.
Okay. And I think especially with our Prescott is so automobile oriented. I think that in order for people to be able to use our open spaces, they have to have a place that's accessible and a place to park their cars so they can access the multitude of trails that we have in the Prescott area. Okay, any other comments for page 2?
Ralph?
Ralph Hess. Couple things. One, and I'll just touch on the substantive ones now. I'd add a goal 2 to involve residents in the decision-making regarding the preservation and maintenance of existing landscape trails and open spaces. And I'll also move that section from 17 to 27 from the introductory portion here on page 2 back to 22, where page 22, where open space goals and strategies are set forth.
Okay.
And I also have a request, since I'm anticipating this is going to be a long, arduous task to go through 28 pages. And I remember what happened with community quality. We didn't get to the end. And we had to submit written comments individually, and we didn't get a chance to discuss them. So I'd actually like to move the open space and wildlife corridors portion up in the discussion, either right before we go further into the Sundog Connector or right after that, because I know there's people here that want to discuss it. And frankly, I want to discuss open space and wildlife corridors with the committee rather than having to end up submitting them comments through emails with no input from my fellow members. Thank you.
So what part do you want to talk about next, Ralph?
Open space
Open
trails.
space.
Open space trails?
I agree with
Open space
Ralph.
trails.
It's too important.
So we do have public here that came to speak on the circulation. So why don't we let them have a chance to speak?
Okay.
And then we do have people to speak on open space too, but we'll wait till after you guys talk about it.
Okay.
But we do have four people to speak on circulation.
Okay, let's do that.
Okay. First, we have Mike Parrish.
Good afternoon. My name is Mike Parrish. I'm chairman of the
Mike.
I'm a noob. My name is Mike Parrish. I live on 3180 Bar Circle A Road, Prescott, and I'm the chairman of the Sundog Disconnect. I think some of you have probably heard about us for a lot of these meetings. So I appreciate you giving us the ability to talk to you this afternoon. Our group wants any mention of the Sundog Connector to be removed from the 2025 general plan. The mention of the word Sundog in the Prescott's 2015 general plan was said by many that the build had public approval and was repeatedly used to justify proceeding with and promoting the highway's construction. There has been strong public opposition to this highway. It will not reduce travel times by a significant margin on SR 69 and has an exorbitant cost. At the February 28th meeting of this year, the Executive Board of SIMPO was presented with the final design concept report and environmental overview for the Sundog Connector. At that meeting, Mayor Good made strong comments against the Sundog Connector. These comments were not transcribed for some reason in the SIMPO minutes. However, the YouTube video of the meeting recorded his remarks beginning at 1 hour and 48 minutes into the meeting. This is a direct quote of Mayor Good from that video. I always am of the opinion of applying the Latin term cui bono. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Who benefits? Who benefits from these potential builds? And it's pretty clear that the developer in Yavapai Hills Unit 9 and the Storm Ranch developer will be the primary beneficiaries. The detriment would be to our taxpayers in the city of Prescott to have them obligated for a $68 million segment, so the developers could potentially benefit with some very marginal benefits. Although emergency access and evacuation is legitimate to be concerned about. But even when you look at the travel time projections on here, during peak hours, you're going to save half a minute. A half a minute really? For this cost? I mean, it's beyond ludicrous. So I would, at least from the benefits and the conclusions from this meeting, in this study, it's clear to me that the vast majority of the people affected agree with the no-build option, and I agree with them. End of quote. If elected officials and the public don't want this build, why would it be in the general plan? We are concerned that many would not approve of the general plan if the Sundog Connector remained in it. And just, how many people here are against the Sundog being in the general plan? Okay, and I thank you very much.
Okay. Wait, before you go, I got a couple questions.
Sure.
You live in Yavapai Hills. I also live in.
Well, no. We're
Oh,
the
you
outliers,
are-
Unit
oh.
9 of the ranch.
Oh, okay.
So when you
So
go
you're
up
on the
Yavapai
ranch
Hills
side.
Road off of Lee Boulevard, there's a little left turn on Bar Circle A. I overlook the trust land.
Okay.
So it's like we are part of the ranch where I'm at.
Okay.
Yavapai Hills HOA is represented here after I speak, though.
Okay. Well, let's have them come up next.
Okay?
Robert?
I'll make this brief because of time limits and so forth, but I have just a brief statement. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and board members. I first want to thank you for donating your time and work.
Name and address.
Oh,
please.
I'm sorry. I'm getting that.
Okay, all right.
Sorry, I had it in the second sentence.
Okay.
But anyway, all right, let's get to that. My name is Robert Forte. I do live in Yavapai Hills. I retired from law enforcement in another state, but happy to be living here in beautiful Prescott. I am also asking that the Sundog Connector Highway be taken out of the general plan or any reference to it. As you probably know, the Yavapai Hills HOA is against the highway connector based on them doing a survey of Yavapai Hills residents. There are numerous reasons against going forward with this project, but I won't go into all that as I know you have heard most, if not all of them. The city has already dedicated tax money to the regional park, which appears to be generally popular with Presconians, while the Sundog Highway is not. The Sundog Connector Highway comes with a very high price tag and would divert tax revenues from our city to Prescott Valley. I have nothing against Prescott Valley, but why would we want to subsidize another city at the expense of our own citizens? SIMPO, the agency that spent $400,000 studying this proposal, has also recommended a no-build option. With the issue of raising taxes, even without this highway, going forward with this boondoggle will put the city and taxpayers further in debt. I ask again that you remove this from the general plan and any reference to it. I believe if this is not removed, there will be considerable opposition to the general plan. I know you guys want to do the best for the city, but you've heard over and over again how many people are opposed to this. It's very much more than are for it. And I know I've heard this over and over again myself, and I've seen that too. Anyway, thank you very much.
Okay. Oh, I've got a couple questions. The reason why, before you go, Robert.
Oh, all right.
Be-
I was trying to get away.
Being in Yavapai Hills, and I also live in Yavapai Hills, and I participated in the survey as well. And I like to get input from the public because sometimes the public comes up with solutions and ideas that have not been considered by committee members or
Right.
the city council. So, solutions and ideas that I'm looking for is, based on the survey, big concerns from the residents of Yavapai Hills were vehicle traffic on Sunrise Boulevard and Yavapai Hills Drive. When Unit 9 gets built and it adds more than twice as many residences as what we now have in Yavapai Hills. Is going to more than double the size of Yavapai Hills. How are those people going to get in and out of Yavapai Hills? Do you have any suggestions for that?
You mean the Yavapai Hillians? How are they going to get out of the new people?
The new Unit 9 people, how are they going to get in and out of Yavapai Hills?
If they use Sunrise Highway, you and I know both that highway is not designed for a lot of traffic.
You mean Sunrise Boulevard?
Sorry?
Sunrise Boulevard you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Right.
That is not designed for a lot of traffic. And if any of you would like to see it, or if you haven't seen it, take a look at it, take a drive there. It's not designed for that. It's just not capable of handling that. And there will be a tremendous negative impact on that entire community, traffic-wise, noise-wise. But furthermore, as I've stated, it's not just our community. This affects the entire city. Okay. There are taxpayers in this city that are against it that don't even live in Yavapai Hills.
So you're saying that Sunrise Boulevard would have more traffic than it can handle, is what you're saying?
I would definitely say that. I'm not a traffic engineer, but just from living there and common sense shows me that it cannot handle a lot more traffic.
I would agree with that 100%. I live there and I go out Sunrise Boulevard whenever I want to go east on Highway 69.
Sure.
And I've seen traffic backed up because you have enough room for two people, or two cars rather, in the left turn lane to go east.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the cars have to wait after you cross Bear Way, because you don't want to block Bear Way. So from the stop sign on down Sunrise Boulevard. And I've seen them lined up, 8, 10 cars lined up.
Yeah.
And then some cars that want to go west on Highway 69 will try to squeeze by the other cars that are waiting to turn east. And sometimes I see people like, you're kidding me, right? You're really going to try to squeeze between the curb and the cars that are waiting to turn east. So
agreed.
And in the survey, 63% of the respondents were concerned about the additional traffic on Sunrise Boulevard and Yavapai Hills Drive. When Unit 9, right now, there's nothing to indicate Unit 9 is not going to get built unless somehow that money comes available to buy that land and turn it into contribute it to part of the Glassford Dells Regional Park. Unit 9 is going to get built. So with all those extra cars, without the Sundog connector, Sunrise Boulevard is going to look worse than Rosser Street looks right now. And then for the cars that want to go west, Yavapai Hills Drive is going to look pretty bad too. But Sunrise Boulevard, I agree with you 100%, cannot handle all that extra traffic. So without building Sundog Connector, what do you think the solution is?
For
Well,
us to discuss, we're off topic right now. We're not. This is not agendized, so we're way off topic right now. So it needs to get back to.
Okay. Well.
We're asking them for comment.
Okay. All right. I'll go with that, Tammy. You're right. Thank you. Okay. Prescott Lakes Parkway. Okay.
Okay. So next person
next
is
item. Next
Mary
person.
Gunn.
Hi, I'm Mary Gunn. I live at 4800 East Amber Road, which is in the Diamond Hills area. I back up to state trust land, and I would lose my view and my quality of life if the Sundog were to be built there. It seems to me to be common sense not to include in a city plan something that has already been said we shouldn't build it. It costs too much and has little impact on traffic reduction. That's really all I need to say. I don't think we need to include any mention of it in a city plan. If it becomes something that is tenable in the future, it can be added to the plan at that time. But at this time, it's clear that it's not a tenable plan. Thank you.
Okay.
Joanne?
Most of my comments are about wildlife and open space. Can I just say a couple things about?
You want me to hand these out?
Sure. I'll just say a couple of things. Yes. Sure. Hello. Thank you for the opportunity. I do have a couple of things to say about.
Introduce yourself, Joanne.
I'm Joanne Ohlers.
Yeah.
2911 East Granite Gardens Drive, Prescott, Arizona, and I'm speaking for Save the Dells today. I do have a couple of comments on the circulation component. I would like to also be able to speak when the wildlife and open space component comes up too, please. First of all, in reference to the beginning pages of the Community Connected chapter, I see that there's references to wildlife, regional approach to wildlife corridors. Thanks, Tammy, for doing that. And also speaking of the need for wildlife linkages and quality of life relating to wildlife. But in the actual circulation chapter, I don't see much of that incorporated into the concept of road building or having the new roads incorporate considerations for wildlife linkages. It seems to be that the wildlife idea was kind of tacked on, but it wasn't really followed through with very well in that chapter. I didn't go through, or in that particular section of the chapter, I didn't go through piece by piece to tease those out, but it was a pattern where the roads were spoken of, but without reference to protecting wildlife. And also the other one item I'd like to address is the SIMPO website and using SIMPO as the authority maybe to link to for information if the information isn't expanded in the general plan that, again, maybe would need to be updated and that it would become obsolete fairly soon. I'm just going to have to say that SIMPO has not been good at keeping their information current. Last I looked, they didn't have any information there about the no-build option being voted for after the final design concept report had been submitted to the executive board. Their website is kind of stalled out on 2 alternatives or 3 alternatives. And so I would just ask that if you're referencing websites that are important in the planning process, that it's certain that they are actually having information that's updated. That's all for now.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have Roseanne. Roseanne?
Roseanne Delgandio, 4789 Sharpshooter Way up in Yavapai Hills. Just happy you had said something about number 2 on the list of 1 through 5, that the city of Prescott would be responsible for $67 million plus. So that money's, if the Sundog Highway does not go through and all 5 on your list does not happen, take the said monies and purchase the land that's over as open space to connect over to the trailheads. If Phase 9 was to happen, it's not definite yet. You can always renegotiate the development agreement with the developer. If Phase 9 does not happen, road doesn't need to be built. If Phase 9 does happen, have the developer be responsible for it, not the city, not Yavapai Hills. It's just one item, not all 5. The phrase from the movie, if they build it, they will come. If you build this road, we will have everything that you had said before will happen. And we don't want that much growth here. There's not enough water here. That's a big issue. And we were told this back in 2018 when we were looking to purchase a house here. Everything was water related. And I just read about what's happening now with the pipeline from the Big Chino Valley. That's astronomical. That keeps growing on a daily basis. Everything has to be looked at. But it's just a thought to say of the $67 million, I don't want to go in a different direction, the $67 million can be used to purchase and make open space. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne.
And that's all we have for circulation.
Okay, Tom?
I'm going to get back to page 2, if I can. Cellular internet access have become vital for communications, education, commerce, and safety. 911.
Okay.
I mean, that would be line 2. Education, commerce, and safety. I think that and I would put in parentheses 911.
Which our 911 center is looking at cellular connectivity within the city. So that's something they're looking at right now to make sure that every resident will be able to dial somehow 911. So they are looking at that. It is important.
We should put it in the plan.
Yes.
So this is an important thing we're looking at.
Sure. Okay, where are we at now, Tammy?
Page 22, open space. So what we'll do is that we're going to, whatever other comments you have in regards to circulation, email them to me, and I will integrate it, and we'll bring this back, if not in June, by June, July. July is our last meeting to review the document. So we'll have the complete document in July, be your last chance to comment on it. So,
Tammy?
Yes.
Mary Frederickson. To that extent that I had comments on those pages that you've indicated you're thinking of removing in total, do we have a sense that that's a done thing?
It seems like there's a majority of you that want that taken out. So we'll take it out.
I
and
didn't
then
get that. I didn't get that sense at all.
So we have 1, 2, 3, 4,
Or
Can we vote on that? How many people want?
5, 6, 7. We had 7
7 that wanted to have it taken out.
that spoke to take it.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. This is going way too fast. Sorry. Whoa, whoa. First of all, if we're going to take out those pages, there was discussion that seemed to be agreed with that as far as what plans are included and considered for the citizens of Prescott, we're not going to have pages and pages of information on that, but there should be a little sentence and a little blurb saying what those things are and what those are included. So if you're talking about doing that and removing a lot of the superfluous information, then I'm in favor of doing that.
Okay.
Keeping in an explanation and removing superfluous information.
Okay. Okay.
And I think I just looked around and saw a bunch of heads going up and down.
Yep.
I think we all can agree with that. Any objections to that?
No.
Okay.
Okay.
So are you indicating?
Oh, hold on.
Jim McCarver, are you indicating by that a mention of the Sundog Connector also? One line?
Yeah, just a line.
Okay.
I mean, it's a plan that's in there. We spent a hell of a lot of money on it. You know, let's leave it in there, and who knows?
Okay. We have your comment.
We spent 30
Okay.
years talking about it too.
We're
Yeah.
jumping around quite a bit, but I guess we want to go to open space so that the people that are waiting to make comment can do that. Is that correct? Ralph?
Ralph Hess, I just, for clarification, what you're saying is the circulation part of this particular component is going to be back before us in June. So
Yeah.
whatever you end up putting in there, we're going to have another opportunity to
Yes.
comment on it and suggest changing it or
Correct.
leaving it.
I'll email it to the group first to get your initial comments individually to send back to me to make sure I got everybody's ideas down right. And then we'll bring it back as a group.
All right, thank you.
Tammy, when you email it out, why don't you request that you reply to all with your thoughts so everybody can hear what other people think?
We can't do that. It's a violation of open meeting law.
Rats.
But I'll bring it back to you as a group with everybody's comments. Okay.
That's like having an executive session.
And we knew
Okay.
that that section was going to take a while and be contentious, and you guys did a great job, and we knew that we were going to have and I'm sure we'll have other. That's the most I think we're going to see for the general plan because there isn't really anything else contentious, I believe, in it, but we'll see. Open space. Now I know there's a lot of comments about open space or opinions.
Just that.
Okay, so we're on page 22, so we'll start there. Any comments on page 22 or suggestions? Ralph? Yes.
Yeah, this is Ralph Hess. On page 11, I just had a question. You have well, it starts on page or line 10. As past, present, and future lands come into city oversight, do you want ownership or is that oversight? Because or both?
On page 11,
No, I'm sorry.
Oh.
Page 22. I keep
Oh, okay.
saying it's line page 22 line. The sentence begins on 10, comes over to 11.
okay.
And we're talking about city open space. Oh, I guess it is oversight. Okay, I was just
As past, present,
never mind.
the city oversight to expand. Okay.
Okay. Any other comments for page 22?
Sure, oversight shouldn't be ownership.
Don?
No, 23.
Oh, 23. Okay, let's go to 23.
Okay, nothing else on page 22? Let's make it real quick.
Of course, Ralph.
Ralph?
Sorry. Okay.
One thing I overlooked. Okay, at the bullet points. So down below line 33, I would add another bullet point that states, and I'm reading from the 2003 general plan, initiate a charter amendment immediately following ratification of this general plan to protect in perpetuity city-owned open space as it is acquired through development, purchase, or agreements. The only change I would make from what is included in the 2003 general plan is I would change the word immediately to concurrently, because we'll be putting a charter amendment before the public, I hope, in 2025 at the same time that this general plan is going.
And you think that's going to make it easier for everybody to understand?
Okay.
Apparently they did in 2003, and I don't see why that would be difficult to understand.
Ralph?
Oh, well, one thing is the charter group is going to actually set forth the charter language. So, yeah, I think the public will understand that. I have confidence in them.
So you're saying that the charter group is going to say that the city-owned land will be open space in perpetuity? Is that what the charter is? Because the thing is that this came up before in a previous meeting where it was discussed that there may be needs for the public good for the city to use some of that land for fire stations, police stations, and things like that for the public good. And if you put that into the charter that it has to be open space in perpetuity, then that eliminates the availability of any of that land for fire stations or police stations.
Yeah, Ralph Hess. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. And I related, as a matter of fact, we've already discussed this after our most recent discussion before the General Plan Committee. The charter group discussed it. I related the consensus of this committee as to wanting to include public use. And that'll be part of the discussion. I don't know what the final language is going to be because the city legal department is going to be involved with it. One thing that Joe Baines is here, walked in after the meeting started, and one thing that Joe presented to the Charter Amendment Group was that there are different types of open space owned by the city, and therefore there might be different characteristics on what type of protection there would be in perpetuity. And as a matter of fact, in the 2003 general plan, the plan designates 4 distinct types of open space: developed parks for active recreation, trails and contiguous open spaces, passive natural open space, and open space and planned development areas. And so, and the developed parks are for active recreation. So what we were, and Joe might remember this better than me, but I remember the conversation being that there would probably be different types of protections for the different types of open space. And that's what the city legal department is going to be looking at. That's what the charter amendment group is going to be looking at. But what I'm suggesting for This general plan is that we use the same language that was in the 2003 general plan, with the distinction that instead of immediately following, since it's 20 years and it hasn't been done, that we have concurrently, since both the amendment and the plan, I suspect, will be before the voters in 2025.
Can you just read that again one more time, what you want to have inserted into the general plan? What part is it?
It's right next to
The paperclip? And this is from,
Could you read it out loud?
okay. So you're talking about strategy 1.2. Okay. It says, initiate a charter amendment immediately following ratification of this general plan to protect in perpetuity city-owned open space as it is acquired through development, this doesn't make sense, development, purchase, or agreements. Any other comments on that, Tom?
Yeah, I think that I think I understand what you're trying to communicate, Ralph. But I don't think that I didn't like that in the 2003 plan either. But I think that what we could probably do is put something in there about the identification and it's already in there. Identify and prioritize the open space efforts. Well, that's the efforts. Our open space period. As to what it can and cannot be used for. Maybe that's something that's useful because we don't have all of our open space identified and qualified. I think Joe could probably speak to that. Maybe something along those lines of identifying it and qualifying it, I could get behind that. But to say you have to do that in a charter amendment right now, no, absolutely not.
I think, to your point, Ralph, there are different kinds of open space, right? So Glassford Hill, for example, we would want that protected. There's no active recreation. Pioneer Park, active recreation. Parts of Heritage Park, active recreation, potential fire station, things like that. So I think that identifying the pieces specifically is probably the only way to go if you're going to put them in the charter. Parts of Glassford Hill that were purchased with open space monies, obviously passive recreation again, but there's different types. I think you'd have to, if you were going to put them in the charter, they would have to be identified. So maybe the language is something along the lines of identify individual open space parcels to be protected through charter amendments or something along those lines.
Yeah, Ralph Hess. That's, if you recall correctly, Joe, I think that's the way our conversation went at the charter review amendment review group. So, yeah. I don't think it needs to be identified as that in the general plan. The general plan is a guideline. And George was involved with the 2003 general plan, so this is language that he saw was put in there at the time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anything else on page 22? Oh, okay, 23.
Again.
Rod?
I said again.
23 again. Okay. Don?
Don Michaelman. Line 34, we make a mention of state trust lands. Should we put anything in here? State trust lands are vacant land not owned by an entity besides a governmental entity. To put something in there stating that an X percentage of this land should be open space, there should be a spot for cell towers if need be, where schools could be, where government needs like a police, fire, and so forth. Should we have something like that in there?
Tom?
Don, we could put that in there until the cows come home. The state land department will just turn around and do whatever they're going to do anyway. So putting it in there is perhaps indicative of more superfluous information. It'd be like telling the feds that we really don't want you collecting income taxes from us. And putting that in the general plan, saying on the state and state land, they have their own rules. And no matter what you say, it doesn't make a difference. Their rules are their rules.
I'm looking for if someone buys the state land, because the state's not going to develop that land most likely, but a private entity could come in, buy it to develop it, and we're telling them ahead of time before they even buy it, you need to have this if you're going to develop this land.
And we could put that under the land use section. That would be more than probably this section, that if properties are state land department, state land is developed or something that it be a planned area development or master plan with open space or something like that.
I kind of like both of your ideas there because you're right. We have no control over what the state does with their land when they sell it. And they sell it to anyone they want to. But if it's going to be developed inside the city limits of Prescott, now the city of Prescott does have a say in how it's developed.
And we can encourage them to do it as a planned area development to have the required 25% open space. So,
Cell towers.
and a cell tower location.
Cell towers. We need cell towers.
Okay. Anything else on page 23? Okay.
Jim Huffman, 39 on down needs to be updated, right?
Say that again, Jim. That was what? Sorry.
For example, Prop 110, if passed in the 2010 election, that needs to be updated. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you. Okay. Page 24. Wait.
Ralph?
Wait. 23?
Ralph Hess. We don't need to make a list of all the public open space, but since Glassford Dells Preserve is such a fine piece of open space that the city just acquired, I think it would be nice to add that to the list of properties that you have in there.
For which?
Under public open space where you have Acker Park, portions of Granite Dells, just to add Glassford Dells.
Page 23, the paragraph that's 24?
Page 23, in there between 6 and 11.
In the examples.
Yes. Okay, I got it. Okay.
Okay. All right. Acker.
24, open space policy.
Okay.
Any comments or suggestions?
On strategy 1.3, has there ever been a list generated of the open space? That's what you were talking about, examples of some of the things too. Do you know if that's ever been done in the past?
It's strategy 1.3, develop and maintain a current list of potential open space properties based on strategic economic benefits to the community. Yes.
George Worley, planning manager. We don't generally publish that list or encourage people to see it because if we try to acquire property from them and tell them ahead of time that we're interested in it, we undercut ourselves in negotiations.
Go ahead.
I don't know if that was clear.
So, Terry, I'd like to see a reference to a map that I know Joe created and gave to me for Earth Day of so people can see it rather than read about it
Where existing open spaces?
and potential.
We can't put that in the plan, like George said, because it could negate negotiations later. And plus, per state law, we can't designate private properties as open space.
Okay, but I'd like to see a reference to a map of what existing.
Okay.
And Joe has that.
Yes. We can't link it to a map because it's not public.
The existing.
Oh, existing open space, yes. We have that map, yes.
Tom?
We're talking all about open space here, but nobody's saying anything. There's nothing in here that talks about a budget for open space. Talks about, a source of funding for open space. If you're going to include that, why don't we start including things like interstellar travel and things like that, things that we can't put. We need to have, what I'm getting at is that we can put all this pie in the sky stuff out there. However, if this committee really wants to put some teeth into this, there needs to be some suggestions in here perhaps about how you're going to pay for it, and having a budget established. So maybe one of the strategies could be to establish an ongoing budget for open space acquisitions and an ongoing source of funding for open space acquisitions. Because right now, as it stands, there's a lot of other priorities out there at this particular moment. They might change in 5 or 10, within the next 10 years. At least by God, I hope they do. But dollars are an important thing here.
That's a really good point. I'd like to address that a little bit more extensively. We've had very intense conversations out actually building trails with Chris Hosking and had conversations with Joe. I know that at least one council person is totally in favor of including with the new proposal for a tax for fire, police, to include open space trails in that. And here's exactly one of the main reasons why. When we had the fire chief here and police, I specifically asked, and I asked them on the side, I asked them Saturday at Earth Day, how much more increase is there in the need for rescue, for need for first aid, because we've expanded open space, and it's dramatic. Well, how are we going to pay for that? The more we build, and the recognition of what a real community is, partly is in open space and trails and outdoor recreation. You can't deny the importance of it. How are we going to pay for that? So there needs to be a reference in here. I agree with you totally. How is this going to get funded? The public really needs to be aware that this needs to be paid for, and we don't have it. We don't have a full-time permanent grant proposal writer. That's a huge fault in this community. We don't have a tax dedicated solely to the protection of any of that or the enhancement or the maintenance of it. Those things need to be included here as a goal for the future.
Gary, how would you want to have that expressed in the general plan?
Goal 2 on page 25, seek collaborative ventures between private, public, and nonprofit sectors for expanding, improving, maintaining, and providing stewardship for open space. Strategy 2.2, continue investigation of other potential funding mechanisms for the purchase, improvements, and maintenance of open space and trails.
I don't see anything about a tax.
Well, that's part of the investigation of other potential funding mechanisms.
I think it should be in there. Public should be aware that there's a potential they may be paying a tax.
Yeah, if I could make a suggestion on strategy 2.2, it might be continue to investigate other potential funding mechanisms for the purchase, improvements, and maintenance of open space, such as the general fund, potential sales tax increase, grant funding.
Yes.
And any private donations. Try to encompass all potential funding into that strategy.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
Thank you, Joe. This should not be a surprise to anybody that it's going to be needed. How many? I won't get into all the deaths because of bad drivers recently, but how many more people have to be rescued because they come unprepared, and that costs a lot of money. You know, these new trails that we're building, we had to hike 1.5 miles in just to where our tools were for the new trails. The only way to get people out of there is going to be a helicopter. That has to be paid for. So,
Rod.
I totally agree with inserting the words that Joe just mentioned, examples of what those potential funding mechanisms might be. And there has been a lot of talk about a small tax, and it would be much smaller than the PSPRS tax that was just retired.
That sounds good, Rod. And Ted just asked that Joe repeat his suggestion for insertion into the general plan.
Great. My memory is not as good as you think it is, Ted. Continue investigation of other exclude the word other potential funding mechanisms for the purchase, improvements, and maintenance of open space, including the general fund, potential sales tax increases, grant funding, and private donations.
Yes, perfect.
Sounds very good.
Great.
Pretty good.
Thank you.
You have a better memory than you think, Joe.
Okay.
All right. Where are we now, Tammy? Oh, Ralph.
Yeah, Ralph has back to page 24. Strategy 1.2 at line 38 through 39. makes reference to a former advisory committee. And looking at the 2015 general plan, it had this same strategy in it, referring to a former advisory committee, which led me to, once again, the 2003 general plan. Goal number 6 was to create a city council appointed advisory committee on open space acquisition and stewardship to exist for the term of the sales tax extension. Well, we don't have that sales tax extension anymore, but I would suggest that you take Goal 6 from the 2003 general plan together with the strategies, which there's 4 of them, and just modify them.
What page in the 2000?
It's on page 91 of the 2003 general plan.
Thank you.
And I would suggest we reinstate the advisory committee and include, or do a commission, but whichever, we can talk about that. But I think this is, the 2003 information is good.
Thank you.
I like the 2000.
Okay,
Okay,
next,
Okay.
24. Okay.
Gary.
Are we on page 25 yet?
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Strategy 1.6. I need to inform everybody, this is incredibly important. Here's why. I had cameras put in I had ADOT put a camera in where the Circle Trail is by Lowe's, the tunnel, and they took over 300 photos. Not one deer would cross. The annual cost in this country for a lack of wildlife corridors is $8 billion a year. That's money. That's not including the lives of both the animals and the people. Years ago, I had that done, and then I researched potential funding for that. And there is a specific area in the federal government just for wildlife corridors. I took all that information. I went to then Congressman Gosar's office with all that information. All he had to do was make a phone call. He said, "I'm too busy." Everyone in this audience who drives pays extra on your insurance because we are the 3rd highest animal kill zone in Arizona. That's a fact. I went to 3 different insurance companies and to back it up and verify the importance of wildlife corridors. And they said you are paying extra because of those facts. The facts don't lie. We just can't say enhance wildlife corridors. We need to say incorporate or demand that there be. I know that when Simpo approached us for a booth at Earth Day, I said, "Are you going to talk about wildlife corridors?" Yes.
You mean crossings, right?
Crossings. Yes.
So we discussed that in the next section, wildlife corridors.
Yes.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Yes.
But that really needs to be emphasized, the cost of that for every taxpayer here.
Okay. Anything else on page 25? Nope. Okay. Page 26. So the last goal under open space, and is there anything for open space there in goal 4? No. Okay. Comments? What?
Any comments on,
Yes.
on goal 4 from open space on page 26?
Okay, so since we're into open space, we do have a couple of people to speak on open space, so we'll have them come up. First, we have Joanne, and you have her comments on her suggestions on your handout she handed out.
Hi, I'm Joanne Ohlers, Prescott, Arizona, speaking for Save the Dells. And I've been actively crossing out all my notes as people have spoken because there's been so much that is covered that I was planning to speak on that people were concerned about also. So I appreciate all of your good conversation. You have some great paper airplane material now that you can use later if you want. For the open space part, I was looking at Goal 1, Strategy 1.1, and I think my main point speaking on this today is to encourage the language that incorporates the public in some of this decision-making or collaboration. And so Strategy Goal 1 Strategy 1.1 is place open space activities organizationally within the Recreation Services Department with participation from the outdoor recreation-related nonprofits. And I wanted to say, and other groups and individuals, just because there is, there's a lot of wealth in our experience here in the community with professionals and others who have expertise and time that could give, could contribute. So there's that. And then on goal 4, we have, this would be strategy 4.1. And strategy 4.1 says, encourage the creation of a regional watershed conservation, restoration, and management plan. And this is not about public input, but I'm thinking that including the words, including perennial water. Oh, I'm sorry, that is not correct. Scratch that. I was looking at the wrong line for that. Excuse me for that. And then what we could do is go to under the open space then and wildlife. There is one other item here. Yes, and it did have to do perhaps with the wildlife corridors. It's the next topic that we'll be speaking about too. But it would be in terms of looking at that open space regionally that have the language of wildlife corridors included in the open space element too, just like I would love to see that included more in the roads part. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne.
Greg Murray.
Oh, Greg. Was here. Hi, Greg. Hi. I'm glad he's here.
Hi, I'm Greg Murray. I live at 5164 Porter Creek Drive, and I just had I've got my notes on my phone here, but I want to commend all the work that the staff and the committee has done on this. There's a lot of really great ideas for the future in the sections on wildlife and open space. But I just wanted to make a comment on goal 1 under open space, and that was to build a strategic approach to open space acquisition opportunities. I'd like to suggest that it needs to have another guiding principle of connecting natural open spaces with one another. Open spaces that are connected with one another have greater value to wildlife populations than those that are isolated from one another. By connecting them together, whether they're on city land or private land or land in the county or in Prescott Valley, they allow wildlife to move over the landscape to follow their food and water resources. It allows them to maintain their genetic diversity, and we know that small populations are just more likely to go locally extinct by chance. Connecting these open spaces to one another prevents that from happening, or at least reduces the likelihood of it. And open or connected open spaces also provide greater recreational opportunities for people to access them via the connected trail systems and direct pedestrian access from residential and commercial areas and so forth. So a candidate natural space that's connected to others would have a greater value to wildlife than a larger but less expensive candidate that's isolated from the others. So I would just say that, and some of this I think is touched on in the wildlife section as well, but I'd like to have a guiding, the idea that another really important guiding principle isn't just for open space, but connected open space. Thanks.
Thank you, Greg.
Terry.
Gary.
Gary Werb. I heard a reference to, in terms of funding and that, to private. When I moved here in 2006, there were approximately 67 grantors in the greater Prescott area or the Prescott area, some donating to open space and that. Now there are 933, 18 years later, and quite a lot of them donate to open space, outdoor recreation, and trails. Not particularly here, although some do. Rod and I happen to chair a not-for-profit that is dedicated to open space, outdoor recreation, and trails. On Saturday, I wrote 4 checks to 4 different organizations representing that. But I know there's huge potentials here for those people to be approached when the city finally hires somebody to do that and enhance the funding that's here and the potential for funding. Those people are not approached because nobody here through the city, there is no one in the city doing that. Needs to happen.
So, Gary, what would you want into the
Well,
put
there was
into
the
the general
mention
plan?
of funding, I think, and Joe's already
Okay,
expanded.
okay, so this goes back to what Joe said. Okay, all right.
So do we have anything else for open space right now? Okay. Wildlife corridor. So many of you, or you've, and she's been here, JD Greenberg, she would be here today because this is her baby, wildlife corridors. And I've been discussing this section with her and going over it, and also with the wildlife specialist for Arizona Game and Fish, who's also part of the EMAC subcommittee that's part of SIMPO. So SIMPO is, they are a regional body or a regional organization for this area. And so one thing that they're going to work on or start working on is a environmental study that looks at trails, wildlife corridors, and things like that, drainages to see where the connectivity can possibly be. We don't have this information in one database for the region, so this is a really big step for that SIMPO's taking on. And we, as the city of Prescott, in regards to, we have representation on the EMAC. I'm the chair of the EMAC committee. And then we also have representation on their TAC and, of course, the SIMPO board. So the city of Prescott is going to be very much involved in this. And so, I'm very excited for this to happen because I haven't seen that for this side of the mountain. We did this for the Verde, but not for this side. And there are a lot of wildlife studies out there that have been done over the years, and I was involved in all those as a county representative, so I'm kind of familiar with a lot of that. But this was vetted out by Game and Fish to make sure we're addressing, and we also looked at other wildlife corridor studies throughout the state that were done that we're using as samples. So just to kind of give you background of where this information came from, we did look at other studies in the state that were done for wildlife corridors, and we kind of borrowed information, language, and some of the goals and strategies. JD was very happy with this section, just so you know, which made me feel really good. But there's always something to add if you feel there's something that needs to be added to this. So that's my opening statement on this.
Rod.
Yeah, I just want to clarify the use of the terms corridors and crossings. They're 2 different things. Corridors involves connecting open spaces, as Greg just mentioned, so that wildlife can move between them. Crossings is maybe what SIMPO is more specifically studying, maybe, because that's crossings over roads, which they plan. And crossings are part of corridors, but a small part of corridors. And corridors are not that closely related to crossings.
And we do have identified funding for the creation of new wildlife corridors, and we could put in crossings on there because the crossings is the big expensive part of that.
Expensive but effective.
Yes.
Well, nationally and internationally, the reduction rate of wildlife crossings is 93%.
Mm-hmm.
That's huge economic,
Yes.
as well as lives.
So we give the
Ralph.
strategy 1.4, so identify funding for the creation of new wildlife corridors and crossings, because that's a problem we're having is the funding.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Ralph?
Timmy, what's the acronym EMAC stand for?
MAG?
No,
EMAC.
Oh, sorry. I'm like, what? Environmental Mitigation Advisory Committee. There's a couple other words in there, and I always forget, but environmental mitigation is what they're looking at. They're looking at the new projects as they come through SIMPO and look at potentials for wildlife crossings. The only one that has come forward was the 69 widening through from Lowe's down to Frontier Village. Problem is, that ADOT was already way into their plans, and they were not willing to budge on putting the under crossing in to make it bigger, because there's a tunnel, but isn't used by the wildlife, and we know that. And that's the area that's number 3 in the state for wildlife kills in the state.
And we don't want it under, we want it over.
Yeah, but the question with that is when you do the crossings, one thing you have to look at is that you may have the open space over here, but on the other side, is it going to remain to be open space and continue on? So that's the things you have to look at, the corridors. That one was kind of iffy, and where could the crossing go? We did look at that, and there was no funding. So, but that can happen in the future after the widening, that a corridor over crossing could happen. They are very expensive, but there is a lot of funding. There's federal funding that's coming out right now for all that, and we're becoming more aware of all that.
And grant
So-
money.
Tammy.
There's grant money.
Mary Frederickson,
Mary?
just on that point, some of the land along the 69 and also the 89 going up from the 69 north, I think is tribal land. Is there discussion with the tribe as far as allowing for that landing point for a crossing?
Well, that would be something we discuss later. Right now, they're focusing, just finishing they're going to start doing they're getting out for bid right now for the widening, I believe. But that's something that could be looked at later. The tribe was involved with the widening project, so they're kind of aware, but that's a different conversation to get them involved a little bit more. And that's a little far down because on the other side is Frontier Village,
Right.
tribal, so.
Tammy, strategy 1.1 on wildlife corridors. You have required developments to evaluate animal species within their development sites, things like that. And that makes sense on a lot of developments. But like by way of example, we're going to be looking at 2 plats or 2 different things tomorrow in planning and zoning. One is a very small plat that's going to be over the Senator drive-through, the drive-in. And there are other small plats. So I'm thinking that there needs to be a size that we need to consider in something like this to require, if I'm going to put in 10 homes, in an area that's already been developed, it seems ridiculous to do. That's like, yeah. So something has to be addressed there in size. I don't know what that magic number would be, but it shouldn't be across the board.
Sure.
And you say that's part of an existing development?
Well, it's a new plat coming
plat.
forward.
Okay.
But it's not adjacent to the forest. It's infill development. So the infill developments are a little harder because there's no connection. Maybe for new master plans, and so they put that adjacent to open space.
AED would be great. That would have been something that size, but for 15 units
To open
infill, that
space
just doesn't make sense.
or public lands. So how about adjacent to open space or public lands?
Sure.
Because if it's infill, there's no connection. The wildlife aren't going to be. Well, they might be, but
Well, they do.
oh, I know. I have 2 herds, so that live at my house. So,
Do you know if that was done for AED or any James property or
no, but we can look at it in the future plats. Once we have because right now we don't have any data to look at. So that's when we get that study done, then we'll have something to look at to see where the wildlife are and where their corridors are. Once you know where their corridors are, then you know where then you can look at potential crossings. And of purchasing additional open space to protect where a crossing could go. Because you don't want to build a crossing for $2.5 million and then get a development happen on the other side. So,
Okay.
okay. Page 27, anything under those? Like I said, under strategy 1.4, identify funding for the creation of new wildlife corridors and crossings. So. No others? Well, let's see. We're going to. And then, okay, next, digital connectivity. Is there anything in this that you feel needs to be updated or changed?
I do. Line 5, it's just a typo. It reads, let me go from the sentence, line 4 and 5. Others tried using MiFi devices that use cellular data or booster antennas, but that provided be insufficient and I think you meant unreliable,
Okay.
not reliable.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
No, it's not.
That's yeah, and MiFi, is it Wi-Fi or MiFi?
They're MiFis.
MiFi, okay. Yeah. So, and then also on strategy, or under strategy, I'd like to see also a strategy 1.5 add to the list. Encourage the building of new cell towers and streamline the approval process for new cell towers.
Encourage the development
Or building, yeah, development or building, whichever.
of building new towers and streamline the process.
Yeah, the approval process.
Streamline the approval. We tried that at one time, and then it was election year. We were kind of looking with the county. So the county changed their code to allow taller cell towers in certain areas by right with development criteria, and we kind of were looking at that, and then it didn't go anywhere. So, but it's something we could look at again in the future.
I think the pendulum might start swinging back because it's getting to the point now, nobody can build a cell tower anywhere. It gets shut down, and that needs to be changed. People are starting to say, this is ridiculous. We're a quarter of the way into the 21st century, and you can't get decent cell service. Are you kidding me? So,
Just a general comment that alternatives to cell towers have to be considered. I don't know of what they are, but I think we need to have someone looking at that actively.
okay.
911 again? Add it into that. It's the service, the reason that for doing interconnectivity is safety.
Ralph?
Ralph Hess. I'm not on the same at the end of this document back on page 28, but I'm going back to page 2 where in the introductory comments you refer to the cellular and internet access. At lines 3 through 5, you're talking about the negative impacts on property values. That's a common belief. There's a common belief that these facilities have negative impacts on property values. However, newer studies have identified good cellular connectivity to facilitate home-based work is a positive rather than negative impact. But I think those are two different concepts. The people who are concerned about property values don't like the towers near their, at least what I understand, near their houses because then you see them. I don't think they're opposed to connectivity. I think they're opposed to having those cells where they're next to their property. So if you're going to, so I think property values, of course, increase with connectivity.
With you.
But whether or not they, that doesn't have an impact on whether the towers are near their houses. So, I mean,
No, Ralph, that is incorrect. That is
No.
Connectivity depends on where cell towers are. Period.
No, I understand that. But what I'm saying is this needs to be phrased differently because you're talking about two different things.
No, you're not.
Yes, you are.
No, you're not. It's the same thing.
Okay. Well, I don't want to argue about it.
I like what you have in here, Tammy.
And most of it, I sent you guys the study from the Arizona Commerce Authority, and most of that was in regards to internet access, because that is a huge problem we have in the county here, because we have one major provider of internet, and people complain about it all the time. So Yeah, so that's definitely something that needs to be looked at. Of course, competition, and cell towers, we're starting to get more because Verizon is the biggest carrier here. It has the best coverage. AT&T is starting to come into the area, and so is T-Mobile. So with new towers, with connecting to other towers. So we are seeing that a little bit, but there is some areas that could have benefit from better more connectivity to allow for the data capacity that we're having an issue with. It's not really connecting for 911 purposes because you can text 911 and get a message out. Texting doesn't use as much data. It's the data capacity we're having an issue with, that when everybody comes to town and we have a big event here, who has troubles with their cell phones? Everybody.
And when somebody needs 911, texting 911 is not intuitive.
Yes, no, it's not. And people don't know that, but it is something they're starting to educate, that you can text 911 to get for an emergency if you can't get a call out. Because the texting, I did learn that does not take as much data. So, but that's
Talking
something.
about boomers like us who have flip phones trying to text out 911.
That's not a flip phone.
That's not, but there are.
But yeah, but it is an issue that we have, is the capacity of because we all use these on our daily lives for everything. And if you don't have capacity, you can't use it very well. So that's something that does need to be looked at, rather than just saying that you have access to internet, because sometimes you don't have that. If the power goes out, you don't have internet, and you can't get out. So so what we'll do is I'll go back and rework the transfer to circulation section based on all the conversation. I'll re-listen to it to make sure I get everything. And then I'll email it to everybody to get your ideas or your thoughts individually. And then we'll bring it back later with another section. Is that a game plan?
Yeah.
Sounds
Okay.
good. Are there any sections that we overlooked that someone had information for? Deep Well Ranch?
Those will be left in. So those sections, it talks about the master plans that have been approved will stay in, because those are that shows city approved, those have been approved master plans, and it explains why there's what connectivity it creates. So we'll leave that in.
Page 9,
Page 9,
line 10.
line 10.
Did you mean to have Dell Estates a developing master plan community?
Oh, thank you. And I do have someone editing these too, so I mean, that's one thing that our consultant is doing, is kind of going through and maybe rewording things a little bit based on their experience with other plans. So I think we're good. Next meeting is, my notes here. Resiliency and Sustainability on May 29th. And I have copies for you. Don't lose them. They'll start charging you. So resiliency and sustainability, it consists of, let me go through it real quick. Fire, water, environmental planning, water quality, lakes, water resources, which water resources is kind of looking this over again, and they may have some changes, and they're also working with the Water Issues Subcommittee for some potential to make sure they're addressing everything.
Tammy, will Matt be here for that?
I will invite Matt.
Thank you.
Yes.
Perfect.
Emerging contaminants like PFAS and that stuff, the bad stuff, climate and energy. So there's a lot to this. This one's 24 pages, not so bad. But it has a lot in it. So, and if you feel free to also send me questions beforehand and let me know what page and line you're looking at. Does this help, having the lines numbered and everything?
It helps quite
Yes.
a bit.
I thought so too. Okay.
Tammy, can we go back to another page here?
No.
Oh, yes. Page 17.
Okay.
Strategy 1.3, support improvements of arterial streets by maintaining pavement quality. Could you give a little more, flesh that out a little bit for me?
Okay. I'll ask Ian about that.
On Jim Huffman here, line 12, I think it is, ASHTO. Please define that. Okay. Also, some of these things, it might be helpful to give examples of arterials and, all the, just give one simple example, maybe 69, 89, whatever. Sheldon, Gurley,
Glossary would be great.
That'd be great. Yeah.
Got another one, Tammy. Okay. Sorry about that.
We have a room until 5.
Page.
Michaelman, if you keep us here that long, you're dead meat.
Do you want to have a contest?
Sure.
Page 19, we're talking about goal 1, local streets design should provide for, and so on, so on, so. A new development comes in now. Usually one side of the street's posted as no parking on it. It's very common. Should we put anything in there about going back to some of the older streets before that became law and make no parking in some of those streets? Because like the street I live on, it'd be very helpful to have no parking on one side, because when someone has neighbors or events going on, it gets difficult to squeeze between two sets of parked vehicles. And especially if you had a fire truck trying to come up.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a specific city ordinance about that. It's a fire lane side is the side that no parking is allowed on, and whether the city chooses to specify that for a particular street depends on the width of the street.
Can I go back to Jim's comment about identifying some of these things in here? Is there going to be a glossary in this? Okay.
Good. One other comment. Huffman again. Transportation networks, can you kind of define what you mean by that? That's line 39, strategy 1.7 on page 17. Okay. Thank you.
Have we covered everything?
I believe so.
We have the next meeting planned.
Yep, May 29th.
Any more ideas from anyone? Okay, Ralph?
Yeah, Ralph Hess. When we have time, I'd like to revisit the major amendment, because we've never we never really finished up on that, and I recognize these things that we've been looking at the past 2 meetings have taken quite a bit of meeting time. So if we have a meeting that's going to allow a little more time, I'd like to revisit that major amendment provision, please.
Got one? It sounds good. I agree with Ralph that we should revisit the major amendment section as well. Any other questions, comments, suggestions? Any from the public or city council? Roseanne, you had some great suggestions when you spoke too. I like this. Yes, absolutely. Roseanne, come on up. Come on up.
Come on down.
That's what I figured with the fire ordinance, like you had said.
You want to sit down too?
Roseanne Delgandio. What you had mentioned, Rod, with the fire lane. My nephew's FDNY, so yes, you need to have something. So it is difficult to have one side of the street parking, but we understood why they did that here. Cell tower, I don't understand why it's so difficult to get cell tower approval here. So I know that's a can of worms. Yeah, I don't understand it. Both my husband and I are former telecommunications. I'm AT&T, he's Verizon. We called Verizon to find out about the cell phone towers, because where we are in Yavapai Hills, if you look over the ridge towards Glassford, I'm assuming that's the direction, there are cell phone towers there now, but they're not Verizon. They're others, and it's full. All the tech told us was that the spot is full. The only way around that is to build a new tower. So that's got to, do we have anybody in the city of Prescott that works directly on that for communications, telecommunications? Yes, I'm looking at you. Okay. Okay, Tammy. That's fine. Okay, you have my number on there. Yep. Okay. Anything else I like the idea with the wildlife. We moved here from the East Coast, so we love the wildlife. It's amazing. I don't know what else.
Except for when they,
the javelinas,
eat every
the
plant in
roadrunners.
your backyard. My wife can attest to that.
Oh, we haven't seen the antelope. Our friends up the street have seen the antelope, but we haven't seen them. We saw them on Perkinsville Road.
She's got plant jails to protect the plants.
I'm trying to think, was it something else that I had brought up? Oh, which Joe Baines had brought up about having the fund, the city fund, if there is a city open space fund, can the public be allowed to make donation into it?
Sure.
So, that, not knowing that.
Give my card.
So that was very good, Gary. Yes, okay, yeah.
You don't get the card.
Make checks payable.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't understand.
And Joe Baines would love to get some of that money, I'm sure.
Yes, which would be good. Another question, how much building is in the general plan right now? I haven't been all through it yet. I'm working my way through it. How much, to say
How much
progress
is
is
planned development?
planned for planned development?
Quite a
in
bit.
Prescott?
We're going to discuss that at not the next meeting, the one in June.
The one in June. Okay, I'll put that on my schedule. Okay. This is all very interesting, so thank you.
Yep. Just Storm Ranch and Unit 9, Yavapai Hills, right
We gotta-
next to
we
each
gotta
other.
nix that
That's
deal. We gotta-
2,041 units.
We have to get rid of that. That's got to go. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Open space. Okay, in June. Thank you.
And are you on my email list for getting the agendas?
Probably not.
Okay, if you,
I just figured out how to get into the city of Prescott to find the general plan and the minutes.
okay, I'll give you some information. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, suggestions? All right. Going once, going twice.
Did it.
Meeting adjourned.